Hello and welcome to another episode of From the Ground Up. My name is Margaret Stouter. I'm the Registrar and Site Archaeologist here at Fort Ticonderoga, and for this episode we are going to be looking at salt-glazed stoneware. Now, stoneware is one of the sort of three main categories of ceramics, which also includes earthenware and porcelain. It has a very high temperature for firing, which makes it very durable, and it's also non-porous, so it's a great ceramic type for storing liquids and food. And some examples of that would be your larger pieces of crockery, your stoneware mugs and jugs that you'd be drinking out of, as well as things like chamber pots. Now, stoneware has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, but the technique of salt glazing was discovered in the Rhineland in Germany in the early 15th century. And that technique includes throwing salt into a kiln when it's at its highest temperature. The salt is going to vaporize, and the sodium is then going to have a reaction with the silica in the clay. And it's going to form this glass-like hard structure layer on the exterior of your stoneware. This is going to help with the sort of non-porous and durability qualities of stoneware that's already there, but it's also going to create the telltale mottled feel and look that the salt glazing leaves behind on the stoneware. Now, the Germans are going to produce a variety of different types of stoneware that will be used both in Europe as well as in Britain and also brought over to America. Some of the most popular being the Westerwald varieties of pottery coming from the Westerwald region, where they also use cobalt to create these beautiful blue swirls and line designs on their mugs. They'll also be making the very famous Bartmann jugs in Germany, and those are going to be shipping outside of Germany as well. Now, the technique of salt glazing makes its way over to England in the late 17th century, but it's really in the 18th century that it takes off, and it's particularly becoming popular and being produced in the area of Staffordshire, England. Now, it's there in the 1740s that in conjunction with molds, we're going to see a huge explosion of production of particularly white salt-glazed stoneware. Now, before molds were being used, all the pottery was being made on a wheel or by hand. And so this was a little bit slower, but by using a mold, they could start mass producing all these plates and bowls and teapots so that there could be more mass consumption of these commodities and that they could go further as well be used and bought by all sorts of different socioeconomic groups. Now, the stoneware that we have here, the white salt-glazed stoneware that is found here at Fort Ticonderoga, was most likely being used more by officers just because they had the time and the baggage that could contain all of these items and travel with them, whereas the soldiers, if they were only using what was on them, their packs, and having to walk, might not likely have a large stoneware bowl or dish with them. But they would have been laid out on tables here and used in serving food, eating food off of. But what's interesting about these pieces is that some of our earlier stoneware might be a little bit thicker and clunkier, but the molds allowed for the stoneware to become thinner, but still have that durability quality from being fired at a higher temperature. Now, the molds also allowed for more intricate designs to be molded into for the patterns of the plates, the stoneware plates and bowls and different vessels. And some of those patterns that were very popular were the dot, diaper, and basket weave pattern, which is on this plate here. So there's dots and lines that are repeated with the woven basket design. We also had bead and reel as a border pattern, and this is a smaller piece of a much larger platter. So we're getting these larger pieces formed in these molds, which might not have been as heavy as a platter that was thrown on a wheel that was also stoneware. But our bead and reel pattern has these dots or beads with the lines, very delicate across the border there. And then we also have the popular barley pattern, and the barley pattern has these little elongated dots with wavy lines around it, which was reminiscent or copying the look of barley. Now, we could also have some plain pieces as well. So we have a few examples in our collection here of rims that don't have any patterns that have been molded into them. And that's the same for some of our little tea cups that we have. So this is a plain teacup. Now, a lot of the plates and bowls were being formed in these molds, but they're also by placing a vat of clay into them, so a large flat piece of clay. But a lot of these pieces are also being cast with clay slip. So clay slip is watered down clay, and it's much more liquid in quality, and they could pour that then into a mold and create these very beautiful, delicate pieces. So this is a little teacup or a chocolate cup. We also have this plain saucer. So no details, but again, very thin and delicate. Now they're also using the molds as design elements on other vessels besides plates. So this is a teapot. In this case, the barley mold has been put onto the side of this one. There's also some sort of line decorations on it. They're also starting to introduce color. So looking at the Westerwald pottery that's being produced, they start using cobalt as well in the production of pottery inside of Staffordshire, and they're creating these things called scratch blue vessels, and they are incising or scratching in different decorations and then using cobalt to fill in those grooves that have been created, and when they wipe around the excess and then fire it, you have these beautiful blue decorations that are left behind. Actually, we have that was the top of a teapot, and here is a little tea bowl. This has some beautiful grass or reed designs that have been incised into it. They also are going to start using enamel to put on as an overglaze. So the ceramic, the vessel would have been fired, and then when it's taken out, they're able to put this enamel over it. And the enamel doesn't need as high as a temperature to set into the vessel. It just needs a low heat to help adhere. But because it's an overglaze, when you put these objects into the ground for over 100 years, 150 years, it does start to deteriorate them. So a lot of the enamel color that we have begins to chip away and deteriorate. But they used it to create these beautiful, vibrant flower patterns, insects, bugs, all sorts of little designs. So here's a flower, but you can see that it has deteriorated off a little bit. This one example I have of another piece of saucer. Tea saucer has a beautiful, still vibrant flower on it, which is great. So the red has really stayed there. Then I have this wonderful, whimsical example on a tea bowl of an insect or bug, which is just so beautiful and delicate looking. Now these are all different pieces of plates and tableware, but we have this one archaeological piece that's really fascinating. It's most likely part of a plate or a platter that was probably broken and then reused to make a game piece or token. So it has been chipped away on the sides to create this circular form, no doubt used by a soldier or an officer or even a follower, so maybe one of the wives that was attached to the army to be able to play some type of game and have some leisure time when they weren't working. Now these are the white salt-glazed ceramics. We do have some gray examples here, and while the fort was used by military powers until 1781, the site was then bought by a gentleman named William Ferris Pell in 1820, where he established a home in 1826 called the Pavilion, and his family would visit and stay there. It also became a hotel. We also just had a variety of different tourists and travelers coming to the site in the 19th century. So we find 19th century ceramics as well. And the form of this one could be late 18th or early 19th century, but this is a large piece of stoneware. It doesn't have much decoration on it. There's a little blip of blue, so again, following that Westerwald pattern. But this is very thick and would have been great for storing food or some type of liquid into it if they needed, but most likely some type of food storage. And here's another little piece that has some of that beautiful cobalt on it, and the pattern on this looks to be almost like a butterfly with the body there and then the head and these two swirls as the wings. Now the one piece of 19th century pottery that I have here that's really fascinating is this mineral water jug. Now, mineral water had been very popular in the 18th century and the 19th century. The idea of taking the waters and helping it with your humors of your body and your general health was big in England and all over Europe. And places like Selters in Germany had lots of mineral springs. So they start to capitalize off this sort of fervor in use of the mineral waters that people are taking. And they had also found in the 18th century that you could carbonize water by introducing carbon dioxide into it. So Selters in Germany starts to bottle their mineral water, carbonated mineral water, and ship it around the world. So this bottle here has a little emblem of the crown in the middle of it, and Selters, where the water was being bottled, with this blue cobalt band around it. But what's interesting is Selters is then, of course, where we get the word seltzer, which we now use to talk about our carbonated water. So this is most likely from around the 1830s, maybe a little bit earlier or later, but this was no doubt dropped and deposited here on the site by a traveler who was here to see the ruins of the fort. Now, a selection of these pieces are available on our Ticonderoga Online Collections database for you to explore more, and I hope you check those out. If you want to see more about our upcoming digital history programs, please check out our website at www.fortticonderoga.org, and you can see our Center for Digital History page. Thank you so much for your support, and I look forward to seeing you next time.